Before Andromeda became the name of a star, she was flesh trembling against cold stone, her wrists marked by chains, and the sea breathing like a hungry beast before her. There was no music that morning. There was no Senna celebration, no songs of victory. It was only the creak of iron, salt burning her skin, and the cruel silence of an entire kingdom watching. She was a princess, daughter of Cepheus and Cassiopeia, born within gilded walls, raised among fine veils and promises of greatness. But on that day, her crown was worth no more than dust on a tomb. The people did not cry out her name in supplication, nor did they rush to free her. They just watched. They watched as if her death were a necessary door for everyone else to stay alive. It wasn't her fault. Andromeda had not offended the gods, had not boasted before Olympus, had not challenged the sea. Even so, she would be the price to pay. Her mother, Cassiopeia, had spoken poisonous words against the Nereids, claiming to be more beautiful than the ocean nymphs. And words, when they reach divine years, return in the form of punishment. Poseidon heard, the sea darkened, the waves rose like walls, and from the depths an ancient creature was born, a monster sent to tear the kingdom apart, piece by piece. To save Ethiopia, the priests chose Andromeda. They didn't ask if she wanted to die. They didn't ask if her heart still dreamed. They simply decided her life would be given to the waters. So she was taken to the rocks, chained before the abyss, while the horizon opened up in black foam. There, the princess waited for the monster that was coming for her. But on that morning marked by doom, something would cut through the skies. And before the sea could devour Andromeda, fate would send a man bearing death, wings, and the head of a gorgon. This is the story of Andromeda, the princess who was punished for a sin she didn't commit, turned into a living offering to appease the wrath of a god. In Greek mythology, not every tragedy is born from evil. Some are born from vanity, others from fear, and some blossom when the innocent are forced to pay for the proud. Andromeda didn't start her journey as a heroine. She began as a daughter, as a young woman, as someone trapped by the decisions of kings, priests, and gods hungry for retribution. Her name has endured through the centuries because her image is impossible to forget. A princess abandoned on the rocks, her body exposed to the wind, her eyes fixed on the sea that carried her sentence. Around her, there was a desperate people. Behind her, a broken family. In front of her, a creature sent by Poseidon. Above, an indifferent sky. And even when Perseus appears, soaring through the air after killing Medusa, this story still belongs to Andromeda, because before the rescue, there was terror. Before love, there was condemnation. Before we continue, subscribe to the channel, leave a like, and help strengthen this journey through ancient legends, where every myth holds blood, shadow, and fate. Also, let me know in the comments which city and state you're watching from. I want to know where each voice that follows these stories forgotten by time comes from. Now, turn off the lights around your imagination. Listen to the sea. Feel the weight of iron. See the young princess staring at the dark line of the horizon? Because Andromeda's story doesn't begin with salvation. It begins with the sentence. And when the gods decide to collect a debt, even the innocent learn the taste of ruin. In the kingdom of Ethiopia, Cepheus ruled under a vast sky, where the sun seemed to rest upon ancient palaces and towers shaped by proud hands. By his side was Cassiopeia, a queen celebrated for her beauty, a woman with a steady gaze and a sharp tongue. She knew the effect she had when she entered a room. Her daughter, Andromeda, grew up in this environment of splendor, surrounded by fine fabrics, silent servants, and stories about the favor of the gods. But in houses built on vanity, danger usually slips in through the mouth. Cassiopeia, intoxicated by her own reflection, committed an offense that no mortal should ever dare to utter. She claimed that her beauty surpassed that of the Nereids, the sea nymphs. As she didn't say it in secret, She said it like someone throwing a blade at the ocean. The Nereids heard her. Wounded in their divine pride, they took the insult to Poseidon, lord of the deep waters, the one who never forgets insults hurled against his domain. Then the sea changed. First came strange winds, then violent waves. Boats disappeared. Fishermen did not return. Children woke up at night swearing they heard screams beneath the foam. The kingdom began to rot from fear. Markets stood empty. Altars received useless sacrifices. The walls, once a symbol of power, seemed fragile in the face of the watery fury. At last, the monster appeared, a sea creature sent to destroy Ethiopia, advancing on the coast like a curse with teeth. And when the priests sought answers from the oracles, they discovered the cruel demand. To save the kingdom, Andromeda had to be offered to the monster. The sentence fell upon the palace like a tombstone. No one dared breathe loudly when Andromeda's name was spoken before the king. Cepheus, who could command armies, was powerless against the will of the gods. His crown was heavy, but it offered no protection. His throne shone, but gave no answers. Cassiopeia, whose vanity had opened the wound, saw her own daughter chosen as a bloody remedy for her offense. The punishment found the cruelest path. Andromeda heard everything, not like someone listening to distant rumors, but like someone feeling her own life being torn away before death arrives. She didn't scream at the priests, didn't beg before the people, but inside, her heart collapsed in dark corridors where no hand could reach her. On the appointed day, they dressed her not as a victim, but as an offering. A light cloak covered her shoulders, useless against the cold wind coming from the sea. The crowd followed the procession to the rocks. Some wept, others turned their faces away. Many silently gave thanks that they were not the ones chosen. The chains were fastened to her wrists. The iron bit into her skin. Each link seemed to say that an innocent life could be sacrificed when fear demanded an answer. Andromeda was left alone before the waters. Behind her, the kingdom retreated. In front of her, the sea began to stir, as if it recognized the scent of its victim. In that solitude of stone and salt, the princess understood that fate does not ask who deserves to suffer. It simply approaches, heavy, inevitable, and blind. The waters rose in the distance, first as a shadow, then as a living mass. Poseidon's monster tore through the sea, carving a path among the shattered waves. Andromeda felt the world grow smaller. There was no palace, no childhood, no hope. There was only the sound of the creature drawing near and the iron that kept her from escaping. But above that scene of doom, another figure crossed the sky. Perseus, son of Zeus and Danae, was returning from his own blood-stained journey. He carried with him the severed head of Medusa, the monstrous gorgon whose gaze could instantly turn any man into solid stone. Inside a sack, death still held its power. Looking down, Perseus saw Andromeda chained up. For a moment, even the hero, hardened by battles, seemed struck by something deeper than astonishment. He descended from the skies and asked who had condemned that young woman to the edge of the abyss. The answers came in fragments. Cassiopeia's offense, Poseidon's wrath, the oracle's demand. Perseus didn't just find a princess in danger. He found a kingdom brought to its knees by cowardice, hoping the blood of an innocent would buy them one more day of life. The monster advanced. Its mouth looked like a gaping cave. The waters crashed against the rocks. Andromeda closed her eyes, feeling death brush her face in the form of sea foam. Then Perseus hurled himself at the creature. Sky and sea clashed in battle, blade against scales, scream against roar, fate against fate. And when the battle reached its darkest moment, Perseus used the terrible power of Medusa, turning the horror sent by Poseidon into petrified silence. When the monster fell, the sea seemed to retreat in shame. The waves, once furious, broke more gently, as if some ancient force had lost its voice. Perseus returned to Andromeda. The chains still bound her wrists, but the fate that held them had been broken before everyone. When the iron opened, she didn't immediately fall into his arms, like in the gentle songs. At first, she stood still, like someone who still can't believe they possess their own body. Then, she breathed, a single deep, painful breath, laced with salt and fear, was the sound of a life returning from the edge of death. Cepheus and Cassiopeia welcomed Perseus as a savior, but not every tragic ending is washed away by gratitude. The marks left on Andromeda did not disappear with the creature's defeat. The princess had seen the true face of her kingdom. She saw how people can love an heiress while still agreeing to offer her up to the abyss. Perseus asked for Andromeda's hand in marriage, and their union came to be celebrated as a heroic reward. But behind the celebration, the shadow of the chains remained. In some versions of the legend, there was still conflict with Phineus, Andromeda's former fiancé, who tried to take what he believed was his. Up until then, her will had been treated like disputed territory. Perseus won again, and Andromeda left with him. Her name became part of the hero's stories, but her pain continued to shine on its own. Later, the gods placed Andromeda among the constellations, not as a mere prize for Perseus, but as an eternal reminder of the princess who faced the sea when everyone else turned back. Andromeda survived the monster, but her story carries a wound deeper than teeth and waves. She was punished for her mother's vanity, her father's weakness, and the fear of a people who chose to sacrifice an innocent girl rather than face the horror. On ancient nights, when the Greeks looked up at the sky and saw her constellation, maybe they didn't just see beauty. Maybe they saw a young woman still trapped among the stars, reminding mortals that pride calls forth storms, but it's almost always others who drown in them. And so, Andromeda remains. Princess, victim, survivor, and symbol. Her body escaped the chains, but her legend stayed bound to the heavens, shining over the world as a silent warning, because there are destinies that don't end when the monster dies. Some keep echoing forever.